Finance Personnel meeting to order. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Nope.
There being none,
Move to adopt agenda.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Do the annual license renewal list, Nicole?
Actually, Nicole, I think we'll take you up here for that part. So then, sorry about that. Sure, Judy. Just makes them easier for them to see you and visit with you.
All right. So Judy just asked that I come in and explain our licensing process. And information on this can be found in the handbook that we just purchased for the municipal officers on page 334. But for New London, we do licensing for mobile home parks, amusement devices. So that's going to be any gambling machines, any claw machines, red box, video rentals, things like that. Garbage collection, for solicitors, anybody that's going door to door and selling things, or the food trucks. And then for cigarette sales and for alcohol sales. So the alcohol sales, there's the Class A, which is people that are taking the alcohol away. Class B, more for your bars that are consuming them on the premise. And then licenses for beverage operators or bartender licenses. Any folks that are getting those bartender licenses need to have taken the class, or if they're renewing it, they don't have to take it every year, but initially they have to take the class. And all of these that you're seeing in front of you have passed through the police department. And they'll also have to pass through the building inspector and the fire chief to make sure there's no outstanding code violations as well.
Thanks, Jen.
And there's a couple additions to the packet that was sent out. Those I've provided to you in paper, but those are just bartender's license that came in after May 27th. And then we also have the temporary Class B license. These are your nonprofits, your baseball, your softball, that need the licenses to sell the alcohol at their events. It's $1 a day. And these are the ones that have been applied for this year already. These don't actually need council approval, so I'm just kind of letting you know these as an FYI. Couple notes on the ones that have come through. The bottle shop, you'll see 2 for the bottle shop and for Change Up for the same address. Change Up was selling, or is the purchaser of the bottle shop, but because the sale hadn't gone through at the time of application, they both submitted an application because they wouldn't want to lose their liquor license. So we have the application materials for both. And just to backtrack a little bit, the licensing period is from July 1st of this year to June 30th of the next year. And that's the licensing cycle every year. So we kind of start this process back in April. So in April, all the current license holders were sent applications that were pre-filled with all their information from the prior year. So they would have to let us know if they have any changes. And then they were published in the Press Star. They had to be 15 days prior to the June 8th meeting. So they've already been published, and once you approve them here tonight, then they'll be approved at the June 8th council meeting. I guess if there are any issues, someone maybe turned in their application, but they didn't turn in the seller's permit, which they have to submit with it. we kind of proceed as if they have everything, and we're not going to release that license to them until they have everything. So, we have, we're waiting on a seller's permit from New London Family Diner. We're waiting on payment from the bottle shop because we didn't have them pay in case they didn't actually need the license. We actually have not received an application from Copper Shot or Cruise Inn, because Cruise Inn is looking to change their LLC, change to an LLC from an Inc., I believe. And Copper Shot they're not sure they're gonna do the liquor license. There's something going on there. So, but we're proceeding up until the date of July 1st, as if they have everything, and then their licenses won't be released unless they do. Any questions on the process or?
Well, how do we know if somebody, something missing, no market told me? that you couldn't do that.
To Easy Street. Yep.
To get
So-
inspection done and,
Right, so right now, all of them have passed building inspection and fire inspection except Easy Street. So
can't renew the license.
they will not get their license renewed if they don't get their inspection. And so that's in our code, so it's 12.022. License investigation, we can notify health department, police, and building inspector of each new license or permit. So,
They will be warned of it.
yes, so Dave and I are talking about that because he'll, so we did actually have an issue without tequila as well, but they remedied it. So they got a letter from me saying, hey, referencing the violation notice from Dave, then they fixed it. So Dave and I are talking about Easy Street because he really wants to make sure he has their own.
So what happens is she brings everything before you, you approve it, but they take care of all of that in the background, making sure that all that stuff is taken care of before they give the license. The last thing you really want to do is have somebody come in and they've running everything and you haven't approved their license and then, right, so then you're gonna have,
At least like that.
That's why the process. And we've kind of been talking too about Easy Street, just that you have something in the code about, or you have an ordinance about days open. And I'm not sure he's open as many days as he needs to be, because we don't want people sitting on liquor licenses, because we aren't to our max, but we don't want someone sitting on a liquor license and not another business not being able to get one. So that's another issue.
So there is a max on liquor license?
Yes, for Class A, Class B, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it's like 15 and we're at like 12. So we do have.
Is it based on population or?
I believe so.
licenses that came in between when we printed this off and today. And then you'll approve any license that comes in from today until the company. So we're just gonna change the verbiage on it so that again, when somebody comes in, if they don't have what they're supposed to have, we're not gonna release the license. But then you don't want to hold them hostage for 30 days so that they can go to work if that's, if that's.
Yeah. So the ones that the bartender's licenses that I gave you today, I mean, that was 8 people that came in between the finance agenda and today, between us sending you the finance packet and today. And I would assume that there's
Gonna
going to be
get
more between now and June 8th. I told them drop dead last date is that Friday before council meeting. So it'd be nice if I could, if I can add these to the existing list that I gave you, and then add anyone that comes in at the same time too.
Then we put an exception on the list, approval list to something like Easy Street, because they haven't made all their requirements, like an inspection.
And they take that, you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Yeah, they take care of that on the back end. So you will go ahead and approve that tonight. So that's the
Yep.
process here.
Oh, they're
And-
not on the
And,
list.
Easy Street is.
Oh, this is.
oh,
our
that's the new,
extra ones.
yeah, that's the, in addition to the list. But what happens tonight is you go ahead and you approve that license, and if they don't follow the steps that Nicole and Chief and the building inspector have laid out for them, we're not gonna release that license.
Okay.
But what you don't want to do, again, is to not approve it, and then they come in and they do everything they're supposed to do, and then they can't open their doors. So that's why we.
Playing games for years.
Yeah,
Right,
I mean,
know.
because it would, then they couldn't get on the council agenda until July
Right.
in that case, you know, so it'd be about 2 weeks of business and I don't know. Yeah.
We also need to be careful not to single out. So they can come back at us, Fred, and we shouldn't even be mentioning single places, but, you know, out of respect. But, yeah, so if they don't meet the requirements, they don't meet the requirements and it's handled. But, if you speed 70 miles an hour through town, you're gonna get a ticket. If you don't let somebody in for an inspection, you're gonna get a ticket.
Yeah.
Or you're not gonna get it, you're not gonna open your door. So I think that we can trust the system in place here.
Right.
Approve the list that's
All right,
presented.
so you want to go ahead and read the new,
Can I get a motion on to approve the annual license renewal list with the additions presented tonight and any submitted up to the council meeting on Tuesday, June 8th?
So,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Nicole.
All right, thanks.
Next up is the discussion on the library annex operation budget. Ann?
Hello, how's it going? So in your packet, I presented a spreadsheet that has this year's budget from the library, present library, next year's present library, and then an annex budget. So as you can see, not very many things will carry to the annex since we will not be increasing meetings and mileage, for instance, periodicals, AV, books, supplies. The maintenance is a question I don't know about. Programming will be the same, et cetera, et cetera. So basically the only thing that'll be carrying is the heating, telephone, electric, water, sewer, insurance, wages, and fringes. The person that I spoke of that is retiring, their entire wages and fringes came to $66,770. Minus the $19,500 that is for the heating, telephone, electric, and water and insurance. Gives me about 35,000 hours a year or 60 some hours a week. So the STEAM and the Fab Lab will probably be open 3 to 8. The old library will remain at 9 to 8. We will probably not be open on Sundays, but stay open on Saturdays all 12 months. So the overtime that you see on the left-hand column of 2021 is for Sunday hours. So that'll be gone. That was added into the wages on the other side. The staff will work both buildings at different times. I talked to Fond du Lac Public, who has about the same amount of space in their maker space, and they have one person in there. They have 2 part-time 20-hour-a-week people who do the maker space area. So that's what we're intending to do. There'll be one person in the teen area and one person at the reception area. The old library will have just circulation. So there'll be no computers, there'll be no fax machines, there'll be no copy machines. So we're going to have one person over there with a page in the evenings. So all they'll be doing is checking out books. or materials. All the programming will be done in the other library, the annex.
So across the street is where all the copy machines and everything are gonna be,
Computers and copy machines, yep.
and they're only gonna be open from 3 to 8.
No, I'm sorry, that's just the STEAM and the Fab Labs. The building itself will be open 9 to 8.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, just those two special rooms in the back. If you remember, it's called the STEAM and the Fab. That's the area that we're only intending to open 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 8 o'clock at night, giving the kids the after school to come, and anybody who's working can still come. Plus, it'll be open on Saturdays.
So I guess the question of the committee was, or the direction of the committee was for her to bring the operations, not her, Anne, to bring the operational budget forward, what it would look like if there were 2 buildings instead of 1, and how that could stay within the current operational budget. Now, just remember, some of these are estimates. I had Ann highlight those. So one that's out there yet is building and grounds, and then heating, telephone, electric and water, and insurance. But they closely mimic what they are currently spending, especially when heating, telephone, water, and sewer. I think the one that still needs to be discussed in the background is building and ground wages. So once that gets established, that number, we'll have to take a look at adding that to the annex side. But what this represents is that the 2021 budget currently is at $539,000. And if this holds true, the 2 buildings would run at about the same operational budget.
I mean, as you know, the staff is the biggest, as you can see, the biggest chunk of the, and right now we have about 7 full-time equivalent staff. So you can move those people back and forth to cover those hours.
A question, do you guys share any expense with the museum as far as
The
heating?
museum has its own budget.
Okay, so they maintain the bottom level of the building right now as far as heating and electricity?
The museum has its own budget. I don't know. They have some heating.
Yes.
But I don't think they pay I don't know what they pay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We do have in the museum's budget is a share of the heating of the building, and some share of the building and ground wages. And that's about where we overlap.
So they have an additional 5,000, give or take, in buildings and grounds, which brings us to 36,000 for the building. And that is mostly for janitorial services. And I'm pretty sure we can do better than that.
And that is custodian and maintenance. You got Ted and Jim all
Okay.
lumped into this. so
So
it's
we're
not
going to
just
have to
custodian.
start keeping hours then on how much we use.
Because
Because
I
I-
brought up the question, it was more about staffing. Because
Yep.
like you said, that is the biggest part
Right.
of
Correct.
any budget.
And-
So
and
that
with-
was my concern was that we we're gonna build a building and have to then all of a sudden increase the staff.
Right.
But if you could make the manage with the 7, we all know it's an extra building, so you're gonna have the heat and stuff that just comes with having another building.
Correct.
Staff was my major concern.
So the staffing, basically, we need more bodies, not necessarily a full-time person, because we need to have enough people in the buildings. At the same time, that's why I chose to take a full-time and go to 2 or 3 part-time, because we need the extra
And that makes sense.
people, more than the extra time.
Has there been any difference in budget from 2020 before, like pre-COVID to post-COVID? I mean, was there any, your heating and your electric was obviously down last year
Slightly.
because there wasn't as
There,
many people.
we had money left over last year, which got swallowed up into capital. So we don't keep our money either. If we don't use it, we lose it. So yeah, so any money that was left over last year from COVID or from whatever, went into capital. That's how you had so much extra capital. All the
So-
people who didn't spend all their money because of
So
COVID.
we don't run expenditures where you don't use it, you lose it. Our federal government runs that way. So what you would have happen is you would have $600 in your office supplies, and all of a sudden at the end of the year, your department head would be like, oh my God, if I don't spend my $600, I'm going to lose it next year. So we find we have very conservative department head budgeting going on here, because they all know that at the end of the day, and we have sometimes $100,000 left in our police department budget, but you can explain it because sometimes people move from, you get a new hire, you have somebody leave and there's a lapse in time. So the last thing you want to do is hold people hostage because they saved money in a year and then you go into the next year. And what we've started to do, because we have such a healthy fund balance, is we've decided as a finance committee that we would take, or as a budget committee, that we would take those dollars and utilize them in the place where we all know we need it the most, and that's in the capital budget. So we'll take the money that we have left in the operational budget, because again, you don't want to have an operation so tight and stringent that nobody can breathe. You want it to be able to expand and contrast with a year. And then when we have money left over, we take it and we put it into capital for the next year. And then we can buy a truck, or we can add to the road program, or all kinds of things of that nature. So you actually are utilizing that in a capital capacity versus the operational capacity.
I
We don't
misspoke.
allow anyone
I
to-
misspoke with the use it or lose it. That was not an accounting term. I just meant if we didn't use it for that year, it goes back, we don't carry it to the next year. Thank you. You knew what I meant. I didn't mean that we got our budget cut.
We're good.
All right, thank you.
I'm
So
just
it's-
concerned that these numbers are incredibly low. $3,000 for heating in a 10,000 square foot building.
Well, that's the building we have now,
You have
and-
10,000 square foot in
or
the
13,
the upstairs, not the
or
downstairs.
both.
You have 5,000 upstairs, 5,000
Well,
downstairs,
it's actually 13,900 or something.
total up and down.
And we carry them out, and
The museum pays for their half of the utilities.
they don't have half the building, but okay, they have 3,000, what do you have?
Our heating budget is
2,800.
2,800.
2,800.
For the downstairs would be 2,800 was her budget.
For just the museum.
Museum.
Just the museum. There are six furnaces. There are 6 furnaces in there. They have 1. The rest of the building is mine. And the air conditioning, and the air conditioning.
$2,800 for a small section of your building that she has budgeted for heating. This is twice as big at the same,
Well, I'm hoping that it's more efficient than 100 and,
sure, but it's also all technology. It's all computers. It's, there's gonna be more
well,
lights.
now that's
more-
not, that's electricity.
Children
That's
are gonna
not,
be coming in, plugging their phones in.
that's electricity. That's not heating. My electricity, water, sewer is 13,500, which she has none of. So this budget pays the entire building. So yes, that was the difficult part about the electric,
Right.
water and sewer is they said, if you told me you were going to build a pole shed, I could tell you how much it's going to be. Or if you told me you were going to build, I don't know what else they told me. I asked 4 people. So let's say I'm $2,000 off. You're going to say, I couldn't fund you $2,000 when we're building a new building.
I think I understand his comparison though. I mean, he's saying, okay, how can you, function in a brand new capacity with, something that large? I mean, I understand his thought process completely. So, and how can the museum pay 2,800, you're only giving to make 3,000? And when we come in for expenditures, we always want to be high. We never want to be low. So I understand these are estimates, but we just want to make sure that we're never going to be lower and always higher on the expenditure side and always higher and never lower on the revenue side that's how I budget. And again, that's why we usually have operating revenue left over and we can push it into capital. Those are the kind of things that you have to think about when you budget, because you never want to stand in front of this committee and say, oops, I should have added more, and it's one of those things where we definitely,
So I'll add 5,000 and. I mean,
right.
You gotta, at some
But
point,
it-
you have to decide how much money you want to contribute to this project.
And I don't
And-
think they're gonna look at $2,000 and think that that's too much money. What you just really want to make sure is that those numbers come in at the end of the day as close as possible.
Well, I was looking at my heating, which is $4,000. So that's at least 10,000 square feet of the building.
And then the new
Or-
building is 10,000 too.
What?
Is that the same square footage we're going into, or you're going into?
10,000.
We,
10,000. About 10,000.
but I understand if you say, well, there's efficiencies and that's what the consultants are telling me, there's no way that you're gonna have those. It all makes sense, but
I don't think you can predict.
Unfortunately, you're comparing a 100-year-old building to a brand new building too, and that makes it very difficult.
I think it's difficult to predict.
Yes.
That's my budgeted heating. Every year I don't use it. Some years it's warm,
Yeah, we can't
some
predict.
years it's cold.
Right, and we've had those kind of years where we go over our heating in every single budget. And then you cross your fingers something
I don't think
else.
I've ever gone over in heating, but I might have.
You go over there and turn it down if it gets too close. I know how you are.
I'm very
I
conservative.
know you
on my
are.
heating.
I know.
I leave my heating at 70. My air conditioner right now is at 75.
I have to say that all of the department heads are in that same boat. They're very, very conservative users of the taxpayer dollars.
It's a guess. Best guess.
And a quick question on departmental supplies and like building maintenance. Are you planning on,
Building maintenance, I'm not sure about that either.
Yeah.
That should have been highlighted as well.
and then what about departmental supplies? Obviously, you're gonna need paper and everything else over there.
We already paid for that.
What do you-
All
are you
that
gonna need-
paper's moving. Remember what's shifting over.
Yep.
The copy machines, the printer. All of that's shifting over. So yes, if you wanted me to, excuse me if I didn't do that, take every little thing and try and guess. We're gonna use $1,000 over here. I mean, in my opinion, it's not going up, so
Between the two, you might have
Right.
used some here and some
Right.
there.
Yeah, and that's,
I don't think you can predict which side's gonna use how much. The staffing to me was the most important thing.
Mhm.
And it was.
Yeah.
'Cause it's,
That's a substantial.
that's the big part of it.
Obviously, if you look at what it is right now, the portion of my budget it's way over half, right?
Yeah.
That's what
As it is.
That's
in
it. all departments are.
well,
I think it's almost 70% in most departments. Especially when you're a service organization.
Don't tell anything. We give it away.
So, and supplies may go up or programming. Right now, we have, sometimes we ask the Friends to do special programming. So if we did need extra programming money, we can get a grant from the Friends. And then we would know that for next year and we would adjust. I intend to charge people for the materials that they use in those STEAM and Fab Labs. So we would have to buy it to begin with, but then we would be selling it. So like plastic, however much plastic we use for each project, they would have to pay a portion of that. If they're going to make a wood project, we would charge them for the wood. So those things would be reimbursable. So we're not going to be footing the bill for all of the materials.
But in that case, just so you know, we will see the expenditure side go up, but you'll also see the revenue side go up. So those are explainable additions that I do all the time when I present the budget. So she'll have revenue increase on one side and then expenditure increase on the other. So it's a wash. But we can't put revenue in and out of expense accounts. It's not proper accounting. So we'll have to take the revenue in on one side and the expense out on the other.
So back to staffing. You're looking at one person is retiring from the library, and you're gonna add two new people?
Three,
Three.
part-time. Remember what her salary and fringe benefits all came to? 66,000.
You don't need to replace her?
We are replacing her with three people. She was not a programmer. She was not, she's not the adult services or the children's services librarian. She was mainly circulation. Well, she's still here, so I won't say was. She is mainly circulation, interlibrary loan, customer service, which these three people will be doing. Now, if it was one of my adult services or children's services, then that would be a different story. They do programming.
All right, so you weren't not gonna lose a program.
I'm not
She
gonna
doesn't do
lose
that.
it. We're not losing a program.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Ann.
Yep. Thank you. What's next steps now? The next steps. We still had, do we come back to capital? Do you come back to the council?
I think where we were at was at some point, and you're still doing fundraising, your group is still
Correct,
fundraising.
which I'll state again for the record, is becoming more and more difficult without a commitment from the
Right.
city.
So we need to, have a talk with Judy and look at what we're able to commit to financially as kind of like a pledge of support to help that fundraising process finish out. And I think it was $300,000 was
250 for 3 years, so
250 for 3 years,
750 total.
750 total.
Which
So
would be about 25%. 25% of the total project, which is pretty much upside down what other cities do for their libraries. But
So-
we already have at least 3 people saying, we already have one for sure, that's $100,000 asking, 2 $100,000 people asking us. We need to see something from the city.
25% of the total.
25% of $3 million is what we're asking you. Right?
Where was your last discussion? What committee was it?
Committee of the whole,
Economic,
That's really the best.
was it economic development or was it?
committee of the whole.
Okay, so
Okay.
we'll go back and we'll talk about getting together.
Yeah, why don't, and Judy and I, we sit down.
Yeah.
Get this formalized even better. Talk about the donation. Judy's gonna have to figure out where to, if we can do that, where to pull in that capital cost. And then give a proposal if that's what we can do. So I think internally would be the next steps to see where we can go with things.
And then make a presentation in the committee.
All right, thank you.
Like you're squeezing the orange pretty good. No, did you saw?
Okay,
I said, looks like she's squeezing the orange pretty good.
that's right.
All right, approve the Director of Park and Recreation job description.
And I'll take those.
Beat
Actually,
Chad.
4, 5, 6, and 7 are just going to be lumped up into one conversation, but you guys will look at making motions individually for all those. So in your packet, and then on the screen, I provided a staffing structure of what the current staffing structure is and a proposed. So a couple meetings ago, we talked about, if you guys remember, we talked about splitting up the Parks and Rec and Public Works Director positions, backfilling those. But obviously, we don't have funding in just to add another full-time position because the Director of Public Services was one position. We're going back to 2. So we talked about internally, and we had to get creative and seeing how we could manage splitting that up and adding that position. So the current staffing structure, and I'm going to focus on over here on this side. We've got the director, and then underneath that, recreation superintendent, currently Ginger. And then underneath that, Ginger was managing the rec side, the pool side, and the senior center side. So full-time positions over on here in this wing, recreation superintendent is full-time, pool manager is full-time, and pool supervisor is a full-time position. So those 3 positions. So in your packet, you can kind of see a conceptual staff structure, how we are proposing to modify that, split back up the director's positions, and where we're gaining those revenues are for essentially eliminating one of the full-time positions underneath. So before we had a recreation superintendent, aquatics manager, and then that aquatics supervisor underneath. What we're looking at doing is adding in Parks and Rec director. We modified the recreation superintendent position, basically put it back into a recreation supervisor position, and then keep what was the pool manager as a pool aquatic supervisor position, but no assistant, full-time assistant underneath that. So that's the position that we would gain to create the director position.
Can I just add to that a little bit?
Go right ahead.
With the history of the recreation superintendent position that I hold right now, that was kind of developed based off of when Chad took on the role as the director of public services. It's a programming supervisor, basically supervising the programming of the senior center and the pool manager. So it was almost as interim as the public services, that they came in together. I had started as a supervisor, which is what the position would go back to.
And then also the other kind of major change would be that before I became the public services director, when it was split up between Parks and Recreation and Public Works, facilities was underneath Parks and Recreation, and underneath here, we're proposing to put that under Director of Public Works. So like I put in my memo, if you read that, some of the changes to note are the street park superintendent would go back to reporting to 2 supervisors, 2 directors. And in this conceptual staff structure, the facility superintendent would now report to the Director of Public Works, kind of more public works side of things, and then more recreation, parks and recreation side of things. And then also the cable producer used to report to the Parks and Rec director. And in this proposal, we'll just keep that under the city administrator for this time. So in a nutshell, that's the conceptual staff structure that we've been working on. In your packet, the new job descriptions for the Director of Public Works. And these were the old job descriptions. And what you see is just redlining some of the changes that we made. So these were the old position descriptions, and then any of those changes. I will point out that Director of Parks and Recreation, I thought I had it in there, but I didn't realize it wasn't in there till yesterday. In this essential duties and responsibilities, Park and Rec Director, I'm also going to add some terminology regarding the management and processing of special events that we get from the city or get from the public. So we get people to bring in a special events application, say it's a car show, say it's downtown Fall Family Fest. Currently, I process that application and it goes through all the department heads, it's a process, and we approve those permits. I forgot to put that terminology in there, so I'm going to ask that we, add that terminology tonight in the approvals for the Park and Rec Director position. And then also in your packet is the Recreation Supervisor position. Again, old positions that we had, and then Ginger redlined them, but it's just a different color. But you can easily see what was removed, what was added to make those two positions. So going back up to the hierarchy chart, the Director of Parks and Recreation, you'd have a Recreation Supervisor overseeing the recreation staff, the Aquatic Supervisor overseeing the aquatic staff, and the Senior Center Manager still managing over the Senior Center staff. Now, the Aquatic Supervisor is obviously over at the pool, but the Recreation Supervisor actually is going to be housed at the pool itself as well, because we don't have an office here, open up to use. So their home is going to be technically at the pool to help supervise a little bit on the times that maybe the Aquatic Supervisor is not there. And then, but it's a roaming position. Ginger spend a lot of time, running down the parks, running down the gym. You're roaming a lot depending on what the programs are at that point in time. But then the cool thing about these two positions, then, since this position will be at the pool, but still doing the recreation supervisory roles, we put in both their position descriptions that they're backing up each other. So if one's gone on vacation for a week, or, God forbid, someone goes in the hospital for a while, then we have someone to back up those positions, those duties during that interim. And we've put that in those position descriptions to kind of back up each other down there. Also with that, since we're changing the names of the Aquatic Supervisor and the Recreation Supervisor, if you're aware, we have a fee schedule or a compensation plan in the ordinance, and that's what you see on the screen right now, and that shows the grades where everybody lands. We don't have the names in there for the two new Aquatic Supervisor and Recreation Supervisor. So we're in my memo, I put in that we're proposing to put those two positions in grade G next to the aquatics manager position. So it would be, aquatic supervisor and the recreation supervisor in this grade to start out with. And then in the future, we're going to be looking at our, regular compensation study that we do every so often, that we can reevaluate to see if that's in the right grade. But right now we're proposing to plug them both in and then grade G in our compensation schedule for that. Any questions?
Why in our requirements are we changing from a valid Wisconsin driver's license to just a driver's license?
For example, Dave Vincent came from Michigan, so he had a Michigan driver's license. And the new terminology is just saying that you have no restrictions. Not so much. I mean, what's the definition of a good driving record? I mean, the definition is easier said, you have no restrictions on your driver's license. So that's something that Jill has picked up with updating position descriptions. So we're just saying that you got to have your driver's license, because technically you could have a Michigan or Minnesota driver's license, at least to start off with. Obviously they'll change
Well,
over.
I could see to start off, I was just questioning all of a sudden you just have a driver's license. I can see where you're coming from when you hire a new person.
And you wouldn't want that person to reading that, coming from Minnesota saying, oh, I'm not qualified because I don't have a Wisconsin driver's license.
Are restrictions like if you need glasses to drive? Doesn't it say like?
It would be more so that you have no restrictions, that you
Right,
can't,
right, right.
I think she's right. I think restrictions could be
I think
considered
a more
classes.
proper word would be limitations. Because mine is restricted. Classes.
Jill, have you picked up that anywhere else with that terminology at all? Or that's kind of what we gained?
That's the general. I guess in the industry, the standard industry terminology. I mean, I don't have a problem changing it if, you guys aren't happy with it. But that's pretty standard, is definitely getting rid of the good, like Chad said, because, what's considered good. Basically, we don't want anybody to have, if somebody has a drunk driving or somebody has something where they're on probation and they can't drive for work, they can't drive.
So if we got to change that terminology, we can look into that, but it's basically saying that, that's limitations,
So it's just a wordsmith thing.
No big deal. Chad, are the funds available to make this work?
Because we are removing the assistant at the pool and reorganizing things a little bit. We're using those funds to basically be able to split up the Parks and Rec and Public Works Director positions.
You can make it work.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the main thing.
So
Staff has had input on, well, obviously Jill has, but
yep,
Other
Jill was
staff?
involved, Judy was involved, Ginger was involved, and staff at the pool were involved too. So
kind of at a consensus that this is.
I mean, I'd love to come to the committee and council, say, hey, we need just another full-time position, but we don't want the money for just adding a full-time position like that. We had to look at reorganizing a little bit to try to
Sometimes
make
it's
this
good to
work.
do this, reorganize.
Yeah, you're right.
I think it looks great. I think you guys did a good job.
So with that said, if there's no questions, then there's the motions to
Start making the motion.
run through.
Make a motion that we approve the director of Park and Rec, Director of Public Works,
We gotta do each one
We-
separate,
yeah.
right?
One at a time.
One at
at a time.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd make the motion that we approve the Director of Park and Recreation job description.
With the additional language about the special events permit.
With managing and process special events applications. I'm gonna add that to that.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey,
Opposed? Motion carried. Need a motion to approve the Director of Public Works job description?
So move.
second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Need a motion to approve the Aquatic Supervisor job description and assigning to grade G.
So move.
Who was that? Push it. Thank you.
Tim motioned and
I got that part. Thank you.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approve the Recreation Supervisor job description and assigning to grade G.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Ginger, Chad, and Jill for all your work on that. Really looks good.
And I'll just kind of throw out the next steps then. This will go to council. And then once council's approved, we'll look at the hiring process. We do intend to start internally. So we'll start with the internal process. And more than likely, at least for the director positions, I'll probably call on the chairman of each committee if you guys are interested in being involved in those interview processes. So for like the Parks and Rec director, the chairman, and then the Public Works director, the chairman, the mayor will be as well. Those positions, I believe in the ordinance, call has to be recommended by the mayor. And approved by council. But that process, the council has.
All right, discussion on the city of New London available revenue sources. Judy?
Yeah. Okay, so last committee meeting, we were talking about, wheel tax. And after the meeting, Chad and I talked about it. One of the things that we thought would be beneficial at this time was to talk about all the revenue source, options that the city has to look at to bring in dollars. And then B, not really think about making a motion when it comes, and I had a discussion with Dave on this, when it comes to wheel tax right away. So kind of taking an educational approach first, and then deciding if you want to continue to move forward with that discussion. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about, I'm going to go through each of these. So what I want to do is each of these independently. And then if you have questions, please feel free to ask me as we go through them. Anything I can't answer because I don't have it on the top of my head, or you want me to drill down on more for the next meeting, I'd be glad to do that. So we're going to start with the tax levy, which is most familiar to all of you, and that's your tax bill. Okay, and I think you all realize that on your tax bill, we are not the only taxing jurisdiction out there. Sometimes you get a hard time because the tax bill went up, and it doesn't mean it has anything to do with the city of New London. We have had a very steady tax rate over the last 5-6 years. It is a goal of ours to keep our tax levy as we maintain as to go for our tax levy as we can. Sometimes you go up a little bit or down a little bit, but steady as she goes is kind of what our philosophy is. We are a very middle class, working class community, so we try not to place any more of a burden than we have to on those taxpayers. Okay, so when it comes to our tax levy, I have a number of things that I have to take into consideration when setting that tax levy. Okay, we are limited to the amount of dollars in the tax levy by net new construction. So what I provided to you provided for you here, geez, it didn't come out right, was what that looked like in the last 3 years. So we go into 2019, we look at all that money. That's what we got to increase in 2019. These are state imposed restrictions, okay? So if you say we're not going anywhere with the levy limit, we're gonna hold it, well, we pretty much have no choice. So those are things that the state has imposed on us. I don't know that that's gonna go. And remember, we are in a state budget cycle right now. So if you haven't watched the news, and sometimes you don't want to, but the state is going through their 2-year biennial budget right now. I'm keeping a heartbeat on that, watching it, because it affects us. And one of the things that affects us is right here. I know one of the things on the table is they're hoping to give communities a 2%, the ability to go up at least 2% in their levy limit. So as those things change and I get that information, we'll talk about it at this level. But right now they're sitting steady. I don't know when we're going to see that budget pass. So if that happens where they don't pass a budget, we will move forward as if it looks exactly the same as today. That's the only thing that we can do. We have to statutorily set a levy limit by the end of October. So 2020 we got 24,000, and 2021 we got 25,000. So that's basically all we could increase our levy limit in those years. The other way to increase our levy limit is through a referendum. At this point, it has not. Some communities have went for referendums. At this point, a lot of them are not passing. They are seeing more and more of the positive side of them actually passing as time goes on. There was a point where there was just no way. A lot of that's very much the upfront education to the community when it comes to referendums. Just to let you know it is an option. Expenditure restraint. The city of New London receives about $100,000 every year because the increase in the operational budget within the city of New London does not go up based on the annual consumer price index from the year before. Okay, so when I'm putting together the resolutions that you guys are approving in the budget side, when I present budget, and then I'll know what my CPI is, I'll kind of move things and shift things so I make sure that we're meeting this expenditure restraint because it needs a lot of money to our city. We don't want to lose our expenditure restraint. That's also why when you look at an operational budget like the library, you're real concerned about, is your operational budget going to go up? Because we have all these other things going on. So if you're going to do a referendum, let's say an increase your tax levy, you got to increase it $100,000 first, and then whatever you're asking for, because otherwise the city's not in the same position because we'll lose it. So that's the tax levy. All right, shared revenue. Shared revenue is a formula, and I can give that to you, but it's very long, very complicated based on the state of Wisconsin. We have nothing to do with it. They tell us what we get. It's a pot of money that they're currently working on as far as the budget process. How much money are we going to give to the municipalities, and then they decide how they're going to. We're hoping today that that will remain at least the same. We have not seen an increase in this money since 1996. We are very tight when it comes to revenue, and all municipalities are in the same boat. So it's not just us, it's across the state of Wisconsin. Okay, our next option is general obligation debt. General obligation debt is very healthy for a city. It is extremely healthy for a city to take out general obligation debt. General obligation debt is for anything capital related. You do not take out debt and pay for your operational budget. So you're only going to get yourself in a big, down the road when you don't have your general obligation money, you're not going to do it for your operational budget. Never, ever, ever do you take out debt for operations. Only capital items. We are limited to the amount of geo debt we can take out, and it's limited by 5% of our equalized value. So if the city grows and we have more equalized value, that means the more debt that you are able to take out. So I mean, you want to do that, but it makes you look better if you have more capacity and less debt. Okay. So our current debt at the end of 2020 was $20,300,000. You need to maintain a $6 million, 30% capacity on that debt. And the reason for that is because, first of all, when you go out to bond, your interest rates are what they're going to look at your capacity, and they're going to say, not really sure you can afford any more money, or the closer you get to that, the higher they're going to charge you in interest rates. So you want to hold steady at 30%. This comes straight from Ellers, who the president is our consultant with Ellers. And he says you have to maintain about 30%. Now, not saying you can't go over that for like 2 years, but you have to see this. There has to be look into the horizon saying, okay, we're going to tick under 30% at some point here. The difference is 14 million. That's what our capacity is today. We are very healthy when it comes to debt service. Okay. There are a number of communities around us who are right tight with their debt capacity, and that's not a bad thing either. What it means sometimes is you have a lot of things going on, a lot of growth going on, and you're willing to take the chance to take out the debt because you know all these positive things are going on. You know there's building going on in community, and your equalized value is going to go up. So you're going to actually see that difference shrink. So it doesn't always mean it's a bad thing when you have high debt. And at the end of 2020, we were at about $10 million. So that's a general obligation debt. The only way you can increase the tax levy today is by debt. So if we have X amount of dollars for our tax levy and we need additional dollars for capital, the only way to get that money today without going over your levy limits and your expenditure restraint is through general obligation debt. And then we have our wheel tax. So wheel tax has actually played a role within the city over the last, let me see how many, 4 years. Printed that one off. So 1, 2, 3, 4 years, okay, from 2017 to 2020. So we've had a number of projects that, and everybody knows about the wheel tax. It's $20 on your registration fee. And I know that it makes some people, do not like it. but it really has filled a gap for the city and what it does. So you can see that we did Northridge Drive was $86,000. Had we not had the wheel tax revenue to pay for Northridge Drive, we would have had to pull something else in capital that year in order to pay for it. So it allowed us, wheel tax allowed us to take care of Northridge Drive, Cedar Street, the High Street crossing, and Industrial Loop crossing. Had we not had this $400,000, we would have had to pull that money from our capital side, and some of those items would have not gotten done. So it has, although I know it's caused a lot of headache and a lot of heartburn and those things, it really, if you look at the message of it and look at the educational piece and what it has done and allowed us to do, what we would at least you consider is, if you're going to decide that this is not the avenue you want to take when it comes to revenue, pick something else, because then we're going to have to decide, how should we make up this $400,000 so that we can continue to move forward in our projects this year at Shawano Street. So it's allowing us to bridge that gap. We got a grant for the rest of the money, and wheel tax is allowing us to finish it. So maybe it is an area down this road that we want to take a look at subtracting on the revenue side, but we definitely have to then consider, where can we make up this difference? So two
Goodness,
items. Yep.
great. You just brought up kind of interesting point where you said it allows us to spend money on other stuff. I mean, it could be on equipment, it could be in capital projects. And I think that's, I never thought of it that way. And I'm sure the other people haven't either, but it does free up money for something else. So it's good in a way. I mean, because you can, like you said, you can use that money for something else. And I don't know a lot of people realize that.
Right. So it allows you, because this is real specific. And when we started the wheel tax, we put in the restriction that only roads, that's all that this money can be used for, not sidewalks, not anything else, just roads. So it allowed us to take that road portion out of the capital projects and buy a piece of equipment or buy something else on that, or do a park project. So it eased that tension a little bit on that capital project side. So that's road wheel tax. I always call it road tax.
I
If
think
I say
people-
road tax, wheel tax, I'm the same thing, road wheel tax. Jeez.
You know, people, I think, were complaining about the wheel tax because the improvements were done in not heavily traveled areas. They had no idea what was, you know, when they do Shawano Street, I think it's more, not, you know, people go on it all the time. They're gonna be like, oh yeah, okay, it is going towards something, not just, so I think it'll get better.
Well, and the interesting thing about that is, I mean, for like Warner Allen and Division and downtown, those are the bigger projects. Those are the collector streets. Those are the ones that you're bonding out for. Whereas we still get those complaints, hey, my residential street is still not good. So this has been kind of focused on some of those non-residential, those residential streets that aren't, you're absolutely right.
Right,
What, does
Aren't
15%
traveled as much,
of the
yeah.
population travel on,
right,
Northridge?
right. Yeah, I don't even
So-
know. if they're-
And I think that, the wheel tax, when it was implemented, you guys as council heard at the time, we got to do something with our roads, but like Judy said, you're restricted on what revenues you could look at. So this was just another avenue of revenue to start off with, to try to get some more money for road improvements. Whether you want to continue that, totally to be determined, but that's the reason, the focus at the time.
It seems like we were doing a road project every year. This year, we're doing the Warner Allen. We did Oshkosh Street 2 years ago. Or not Oshkosh, Division Street. Where does the money for that come from?
Both of those were bonded,
So you borrowed for it?
correct?
Okay.
Yep. So I look at bonding 10, 20 years out. What we allow within our bonding schedule is a drop. So 2024 is my next drop, or the city's next drop, not mine. The city's next drop in their bonding dollars. So we try to keep them even from year to year to year. And then once we either drop off a bonding, one's paid off, which we have one paid off in, I think, like 2 years, and that's that roof projects. You'll see a drop in bonding. That's where you want to stick another project, not to increase levy, but to maintain levy. So our goal is always is always to try to maintain, not increase levy. So you're just continuously bonding, but it's a thought process. You're not just saying, we're gonna put a road in and we're gonna bond. I mean, it's a definitely, we do 10-year plans, constantly rolling out a year and bringing in a year. Last time I sat down with Ellers, we did a 5-year. We wanted to constrict it a little bit because we were bonding. So we're constantly thinking through how can we do this in a healthy way for the taxpayers? Because you do not want to say, all of a sudden I have to do a road and $2 million later, the tax levy goes like this. So it's a definite constant thought process at the city.
When we do a whole road like that, people see it. When you're doing a block of
Yeah.
road, it's very hard to justify the inconvenience of $20. Yeah, $20 is $20, but say you buy a new vehicle that year, okay, now that's $40. Say you have 3 vehicles, that's $60. It adds up and it's a real annoyance for you're being so annoying and not getting enough for it. And I just feel that I would like to make a motion to eliminate the wheel tax.
And tonight we cannot do that because it's not on the agenda.
Okay, I thought
So,
it was.
no. And we can bring that forth if you want to bring it forth next month. But, Dave is in charge of that, whether that happens or not, whether he wants to make that motion or whether he wants to continue an educational process first and find a different avenue for revenue. Because if we discontinue it, then we need to understand that all of the things, we have Spur Road on here, we have Avon, Lima and Lyons, which we received some huge grant dollars for. We're gonna have to find somewhere else to find those monies to get those projects done. Because again, we're always forward thinking and our forward thinking has put those projects in the wheel tax. So I would appreciate if we're gonna do those kind of things, that we're also forward thinking, that we're not just gonna go, it's over, and then put the city in kind of a, how are we gonna handle all of these things that we've went out 3 years for already and said, we're gonna help these projects get completed. And these are high profiles for road, Avon, Lima, Alliance back here that we worked a lot of time on trying to, and North Water Street Bridge. So they're more high, people can see them, I guess, more than some of the other projects we did. But I would just, ask that you consider that before we just kibosh it.
One thing about wheel tax, the state put some regulations on wheel tax to begin with. City of Milwaukee uses it for busing. When we took it, we said we will strictly use wheel tax for road construction.
What do they use it for?
Milwaukee uses it for busing. There's state regulations of what you can and can't use it for. And we sat down and said, we will only use it on streets. So if we get rid of that, we
Sorry.
have to come up with some money to start maintaining our streets.
So if I'm understanding this whole tax levy thing, all the development we have going on, that would be a good time to discuss the wheel tax, because we'll be able to increase our levy then, is what you're saying? 'Cause we can only go up, if I read that right, we can only increase it $25,000.
Correct.
We gotta go to the top. There you go.
Right, there you go. So that's it. And so, net.
So then with all this development, that number should get bigger?
Okay, so what we're looking at, and I'm gonna go into another area here, is TID district. That was next anyway. Currently, the city is looking at a couple TID districts. Okay, this is a great tool for new development. Downtown, as we all know what's going on, and another development in town. We're hoping to get some incremental dollars. So what happens is it sits there blighted right now, and as you add value to that property, the value that it adds is money coming back just into the city. So the school, the counties, and the Fox Valley Technical College do not receive those dollars until we close that TID district. So you do not see the increase in value on the actual levy until that TID district closes. Now, that's going to be a great opportunity for the next finance director. when that TID district closes, when we close that TID district out here, we built our city garage without a tax levy increase. So that forward thinkingness of seeing when that's gonna come on to the city levy is when you know that you can do a project and you can you pretty much cash base, that was almost a cash base city garage that we built out there based on the value that came in. So those districts forego their tax on that TID district, and we receive that revenue. And what we do with that revenue is you pay, to move the sewer and water over there, or you do development incentives so that the money that they put into the TID district, I know one of them talking $25 million, brings in revenue to the city that allows you to pay those things off. And then as you pay them off, once you pay them off, you have to close the districts. It's a law. The next year you have to close it. So the sooner you close them, the better. But what you can also do with that money is you can help pay for the downtown road because it's within a half a mile. Anything that feeds that project is eligible expense. So it is an area that will add value, but not today. You have to, again, be forward thinking and know that someday the closure of that district is going to make a great impact on the city in that year.
And even with the increases like up in here, you have operational increases that you got to factor in too.
I was hoping for a way bigger number than what I'm seeing there.
Yeah, I mean,
like way bigger because
wages go up, insurance goes up, gasoline goes up, materials go up. I
Yeah,
mean,
you
you got
eat all that.
operational expenses that
could eat 25,000 with one of you guys.
you need this just for that as well.
Yeah, so you're talking about the increase in your entire city
Yeah.
wages.
We had net
In
new
there.
construction of what, 2.8 million or something, but
Right, but that's all you get.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the formula.
Well, I'm just thinking of the stuff we have going on and the
Yeah.
amounts is like.
yeah,
oh,
we just
it'd
had
be-
board of review
Yeah,
and
here's the
we saw what. yeah,
It'd be
yeah.
something good, but yeah.
Great net new construction going on, but unfortunately with shared or state imposed revenue limits, that's what we got to work with.
Thus why we move any operational dollars from one year to the next into capital. Because as you increase the operational side, what do you decrease? Capital side. And it's been going on for years because there's really nothing else you can do. So you're constantly squeezing at the capital side to try to keep your people working because we've been through all these conversations. What are we not going to do anymore? I mean, statutorily, there's many things that we have to do as a city. And if you don't have humans to do those things, it makes it pretty difficult. So we have lost over the last, I mean, we can show you how many people that we used to have, how many people at the streets department? 12?
Back, I've seen the organizational structure. I think there was 12 street operators. Now we had 5. We had 5 full-time park caretakers. Now we have 3. We had 2 full-time superintendents. Now we have 1. And that's just one area that
Yeah.
has been going down. Now technology's gotten easier, trucks gotten easier to drive, but you go from 12 to 5, 5 to 3. That's a lot of staff.
We are slim.
So you want to keep your city growth in check. You don't want to go too fast because then you'll.
Growth quick is good.
Good.
But because it'll add, if it's outside a TID district, it'll give you that's net new construction. So it'll increase that number, but it takes a whole lot. I mean, like John said, you get millions of dollars, you get $25,000. So it's a huge amount of net new construction that you need in order to make that number. I think Steel King must have been in 2019. That was probably that big addition out there. That's why that's $54,000 there. But you know what? When I sit down and I do that, I'm thrilled to see that number because it's a lot of money to us. So yeah, it's a long couple weeks when we sit down and look at the budget and all the restraints and everything else. Trust me, I think and I try to squeeze and I try to do the best that I can do for what we have at the end of the day and still have the city functioning in a capacity where people want to move here. You have to remember that. You can't take away all your services and everything from the citizens because they're going to move somewhere else. So you have to think, as much as how conservative as a budgeter that I am, you still have to think, how can I grow the city without taking away so many things that if the neighbor's taken away, we got to try to keep it, because maybe they're going to come stay here by us. And our school district is phenomenal. Try to build on all those kind of things. So it's a big thought process when you sit down and think about, how are we going to make ends meet, and then how are we going to get to capital? So it's a very big thought process without just saying, oh, we can't do that, because that's never a good answer when it comes to a city. You want people to move here.
I just want to say thank you for all you do. I really appreciate you. I'm learning, starting to appreciate Chad a little bit. It's been really enjoyable to learn how the city is operating. With that being said, earlier tonight, there was reorganization because we didn't have the money to hire a full-time staff. So I think that I have faith in you that you could find a way to come up with that money without having the burden of the wheel tax. I really think that the wheel tax is a very strong talking point in the community. People hate it. If people, want to move to New London, well, they got that wheel tax. I mean, it's such a vocal conversation.
Yep.
So
two of the things that we were talking about, and Chad and I, when we were discussing this, are the last two then. So I don't know if many of you have heard about the transportation utility fee. So this is a fee that's added to your utility bill. This is becoming popular. It's not something I would jump on today, though, because we had a community near to us who just made their citizens very, very angry over trying to do this. So I would hold off on this discussion for a while until that kind of clears its path. My suggestion is we can seriously consider this in the future. But my suggestion is that we keep it simple. We don't want a big formula based this, that, and the other thing where you're confusing your taxpayers. And this is what happens. And they have no idea. You could explain to them till you're red in the face what that formula means and why they got their $10 on their utility bill. And basically you need to say, you're a resident, you got $10. You don't need to come up with some big formula to try to make everybody 50 cents different from everybody else. I think as long as you have some kind of make sense of this, and you can explain that to the taxpayers and let them know that's just for roads. As we know, everybody's saying we need money. So here is a way that you're going to hit everyone, not just the people with 3 cars. So they only get 1 utility bill. So this is an option that maybe we should start talking about in the future. The other thing that kind of ties in with that is special assessments. We don't assess anymore. That was taken away probably 4 or 5 years ago, or was it longer?
Longer than that.
Okay.
Yep.
So what most communities do, and we can't do this, but we would say, we're not going to charge special assessments anymore. We're going to a transportation utility. So they drop that and then everybody's happy because, okay, we're going to take away that because they hate specials too. So special assessments would go away and then we would have this transportation utility fund. So what I'd suggest is that we take a look at that and maybe make some, estimates, that I could take a look at some estimates and say, I don't want to, ease your way into it too. Make it small enough that it's going to impact your roads, that you can do it, but not so big that the taxpayer are like, oh, but it's a consideration. There's something that, when Chad and I talked, there you have, everybody's in. Not just people with 3 cars, not just people, but everybody. So you're a business, you're in, you're a church, you're in, everybody's in. So I guess we kind of wanted to know your feelings about, what do you think about a transportation utility? It's a way to get road revenue, and it would be a way to replace that wheel tax money. I think it will more than actually.
Yeah, but you ain't gonna get the people in this town. They'll pay the $20, but if they gotta pay more than $20 a year in on their taxes, they ain't gonna do it. They're gonna be pissed.
That's why I said we need to really
And if
look
you got
into
1
it
car or 10
first.
cars.
It's calling it something else. I mean,
Yeah.
Tim, if you take one thing off of the equation, on this side. You have to take it off this side. You know what I mean? So it's a balancing act. PR thing, I get it. I understand what's, you know, I'm the guy that proposed that wheel tax. I'm right with you. I'd love it to go away, never come back. I'd vote to get rid of it. But what do you do on this end of the equation? You kind of play the shell game and you call it something else. And everybody says, how come it cost me $336 a month for a 2-bedroom house, my utility bill? And I don't have any tanning beds or whatever. But you're going to, the people that are adamant about the word wheel tax are going to pay that $20 or actually more than $20 in the end of the day. It's just going to be called something else. It's going to be called, do you want gravel roads? Do you want dirt roads? Or do you want, it's the equation's there. It's not gonna, you can't create or destroy electrons, okay? The need is there. The 56 miles of road is there. Whether you call it a wheel tax or not, I'm just letting you know, if it was gone tomorrow, it's gonna come from somewhere. And it can't come in a just raise your property tax form, but it'll be somewhere. It'll be in your sewer bill. It'll be somewhere. Or when your sidewalk has to get replaced, you don't pay for that right now, but all of a sudden you got 40 feet of sidewalk, you're gonna have to take a second mortgage out on your home to pay for that. Your curb and gutter. You know, that was putting people, there's a lot of sidewalk work going on in the city right now. Some of those neighborhoods that's going on, if it's more than just one little piece of sidewalk here or there, it's gonna cost quite a bit of money. It's kind of like we're all farmers in a co-op. We all pay for case the combine burns up tomorrow. We get the combine taken care of. It didn't cost one person $300,000 to be able to go harvest this corn tomorrow. We all kind of had money in the kitty. So that's what she's saying about the assessments. Do we say, well, let's bring back sidewalk and curb and gutter assessments, and that'll take care of that 100,000 a year that we make on the wheel tax. So we can take the wheel tax away, but we're still gonna make people mad. We could give them a golden sidewalk, golden bricks, Shangri-La, and we're gonna make people mad.
That transportation utility fee, is that like a flat fee?
It can be, it's all over the place.
You know, because I mean, then you could think about it, well, you know, what if you have 5 kids, you got 5 different cars, you know, they all have their own car. I mean, it could be maybe distributed more equally.
It would be every parcel.
They've done traffic counts, how many cars come in and out of your business.
I mean, either way, people are gonna be unhappy.
If you're at the end of a cul-de-sac, you're gonna be paying a lot of money, even though the cars might not be coming to your house, they're just turning around.
And that's why I would stay away from all
Yeah,
that stuff.
and they make it real complicated, like Judy said.
Right.
It's a fairly new thing. It's about as popular as the rain tax. When that was brought up, if your roof area is so big, then the DNR wanted people to pay all that rainwater to go to sanitary, and you know, that would cost.
You know, I think the biggest point is, I mean, you've heard people say over and over and over again that they want to see road improvements. So you as a governing body, we got to figure out what type of ways, and Judy's got all spelled out here, what type of ways we can utilize different types of revenue to do that. The wheel tax is obviously a way to do that. The TID districts, the one thing, and Judy pointed out, the one thing with the TID districts is you're getting everyone. So wheel tax, businesses aren't paying in, schools aren't paying in, churches aren't paying in, but they're using the roads, you know. So the TID districts, like Judy said, you're spreading it out over everybody who's using the system. Nina was one of the examples that Judy was talking about. They had special assessments. So we're not getting special assessments right now. That could be, you know, a quarter to a third of the cost of a project that we're not getting that revenue right now because we're not charging that. So that's another reason why our dollars aren't going as far, because we don't have that revenue. But Nina just changed theirs, and they proposed the transportation utility instead of assessment. So instead of someone getting socked a $20,000 to $30,000 bill, now they're paying $5, $10 a month. on the
Spreading
utility
it
bill. So they're
across the
spreading it out.
community.
So you as a homeowner, would you rather just pay $5 a month or $10 a month? Or would you rather wait for that road project come in front of your house and get socked with a $30,000 bill?
That's happening in Grand Chute as well. They actually have a lawsuit about it because they went the wrong way about it, but guy on a corner lot is being assessed like $30,000 for just in front of his house.
But the Legion pay close to 100.
What's that?
Wasn't the Legion and Appleton close to $100,000?
Yeah.
Replace the road in front of their building.
I think I'd have a
And
hard
that's how those municipalities are bringing in the revenue to pay for these things. So.
Yeah. I mean, I have the numbers for the Grand Chute one because I followed and was inquisitive as to what he was doing. I can bring them to a different meeting, but it's a lot of money.
I know from being in real estate, like those special assessments, like that was something that we always looked for when people were buying homes. Is there a special assessment? coming
Yeah,
up? Is
we
there-
take
Yeah.
care of that
you
in
know,
our
then that
office,
would
yeah.
be- You maybe wouldn't want to buy that house because there's something coming up.
When I bought my house, I looked at the sidewalks. I'm like, that's my brother's handprint. And it was like this big. And it was Fisher, 1976. And I'm like, oh, my brother was 3-4 years old. I remember when he did that. I'm like, my biggest worry about buying the house is the sidewalks all got to get replaced. That I can't do that. And we took a chance. And then a few years later, I think mayor proposed getting rid of assessments. I said to my wife, "Whew, now we just got to worry about the sewer backing up and the furnace going bad. And now now if you flip it back and you start doing assessments, all the people that kind of got off scot-free up on
I don't
Division
know how
Street,
you go back.
then this guy over here is gonna say, well, yeah, Tim got elected and all of a sudden he's got 35,000 worth of sidewalk assessments. Eesh, now you're gonna be rocking a hard spot to bring back assessments, so. You had them, you didn't, then you have them again.
So the only other revenue that I wanted to bring up was our wastewater treatment plant. That is not tax revenue. It's completely user fees. So that is the utility, the utility fee. And they are revenue bond based, so they don't count against our GO debt capacity. So they're kind of their own little island over there. So anytime I present budget, I will present a general government budget, and then I'll present a wastewater treatment plant budget. So what we do with them is we'll go through a user fee analysis every 3 to 5 years to make sure that the fees that we are charging for the wastewater treatment plant are covering their operational budget, their bonding, and things of that nature. And just so there's a little history on the wastewater treatment plant. We took out our first bonding 2 years ago. So other than that, they have one piece of debt out. So they're in pretty good shape. They have some things that need to be done over there. We also have cash funded Division Street with their retained earnings. So so far so good at the wastewater treatment plant. They're doing pretty well over there. So that's it for revenue sources. Any other questions on those? I think if anyone wants me to do, to elaborate on any of these, bring it back next finance agenda. I guess if you want to make a motion on that, then you can visit with Dave about that after the meeting. And we'll see where that goes. Have any questions on any of the other revenue sources or transportation utility? I could do some research and just kind of give you an idea maybe of who's doing it and how they're doing it. Because even $10 on a utility bill, I could, I think that's really a good look. Like, okay, so what if we did add $10 a month on the residential, and then I could do like an estimate on what that revenue would look like. Maybe that would be just a place to start. Not saying we're going anywhere, but just how much would that mean if we added $10 to residential, 20 to a business, 30 to a apartment complex, what would that money look like? Or $10 to every single parcel, no matter if you were a business or a residential customer. Something of that nature, just so we kind of knew what that looked like. And bring that back. I think for myself, I'd like to take a look at that, so. That's our revenue. Otherwise, we do have fines and fees and things of that nature, but it makes up a very, 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 very small portion of our budget. And changing those things are done based on programming and not based on, are we gonna make a lot of money on them?
Something to keep an eye on, Judy, is all the talk about inflation. And I know that one of the things that really gets hit is bonding. Bond markets seem to be the most vulnerable when inflation occurs. So
Yeah.
I know we have some big bonding issues coming up.
Yep, so for the downtown project in 2024 is what we're looking at for our next bonding. And that will encompass Oshkosh, downtown, and maybe some side streets over there, because it makes sense to get some of that done while you're down there. But yeah,
We've had
it'll
a very
increase your interest
favorable-
rates is what's gonna happen.
We've had a very favorable situation for a long, long, long time.
And that's why you set your city up for these kind of things where you go into bonding and you're in really good shape as a city and you have your 10-year capital plans all laid out and, you sit down with the rating Moody's and you explain all those things to them and hopefully you're gonna get the, best rate that we can as a city. So we will see where all that goes. I guess that I can't control, so I try not to lose too much sleep over it. And I know where you're going.
Yeah.
Our last bonding was 2% across the whole entire 20 years. So I'm not sure that we're gonna see that in 4 years or 3 years, but you don't know. All right.
Director's report.
So nothing, not a lot has changed. So I'm gonna probably just run through these real quick. As far as expenses are concerned, we are in, what month are we in here? April or March? Look at all this, is all not okay. Judy, I got 44 months divided by 12. So we should be at about 33% and we're running at about 37%. And I'm catching my errors in that memo. So we're running at about 30%. And the reason for that is, as I explained in the past, our insurance payments, we pay all at the beginning. Community development, we paid our steel king commitment. So that one looks larger than normal. And then our debt payment, all we have is a small interest payment in November. So you can see that, that I like this one because it's a little more detail. So on the insurance, we're at 77%. You will see that go over 100 and then come back down because we get dividend payments at the end of the year. The one that we did do a little research on and that we need to talk about is our equipment maintenance. Okay, we're at 60.92%. And I know Chad had talked to, went down and had a number of conversations with the garage. And part of this is we have a new mechanic. And he is, doing things a little different. I think that this is going to steady as the year goes on, but we may find that we need to add to this. So we're going to kind of keep an eye on it. We did have some new tink clause put on and some bigger projects that are forcing this up a little bit. I'm not too concerned as long as we can explain these things, and most of it is in that area over at the city garage. I think they feel like some things needed to be done that have kind of been pushed off. I don't like to see that. So the last message we want to give to them is stop doing that. We want them to move forward in a manner of which they think that they're maintaining the equipment so that we can get the best amount of years out of it as possible. So if that ends up going over, I would rather have that than us not maintaining our equipment because we can't budgetarily afford it. What we'll do is we'll deal with that at the end of the year then and hopefully pull some dollars from something else that stayed under budget. And then we'll keep an eye on it over a number of years and see if we need to increase those dollars as time goes on. That's the way I would prefer to handle things like that than to tell somebody, stop taking care of the stuff. And that'll happen sometimes when you have a change in a position of that nature. Somebody does something differently, feels like things should be done that maybe weren't being done. And things will straighten out over time. So if he gets it all done this year, then next year we might see that flatten out again. So, but I wouldn't stop him from maintaining and moving forward. And because a lot of that has to do with safety and keeping the equipment around for maybe another year or two. And of course, with the way our capital looks, we need that right now.
The other two things on that is, I mean, we're seeing that the cost of materials have gone up.
There you go. That's
COVID, I
probably
mean,
another,
everything's going
yeah.
up, number
I didn't
one.
think about that.
Number two, we've talked about maybe we got to shrink down our replacement schedules for some things. We saw that with the trucks. You know, we were trying to push out our replacement schedules as long as we could. And we may have gone a little too far that we got to bring those things back. And then like Judy said, Tim has been a rock star. He's efficient as heck. And because he's efficient, he's getting more done, which is spending more money on stuff, which is not a bad thing, but I mean, we're spending more money on things. So between Luke and I, those are kind of the three big things that we're seeing why that's
I
creeping
think
up.
the
a little
worst
bit
thing
more.
you can do is not look into it and see what's going on. So, and once you investigate, then you say, okay, kind of know what's going on. So let's just keep an eye on it. So that's it for the expenditure side. Any other questions on that? We'll go to the revenue side. Probably be easier if I go back up and then go back down. Why does it keep getting small?
You know, mine was it.
Yeah, why does that happen? That's a great
All these
question.
things.
How
I'm
do we
old,
fix
I
it?
know, like,
Oh,
I'm not a
I-
technology person. All right, so revenues also are where I would expect them. You see this big dollar amount sitting in special assessments, you won't see that in the next couple months because some of those dollars belong to the utility. We take them in and then we have to distribute them back. So you won't see that forever. It's just sitting there until we get that side of the equation balanced, and then off it'll go over to the utilities. But fines and forfeitures, those are coming in great. Everything else looks like we may make what we anticipated. My biggest ouch right here right now is interest. And I saw that today and it was like, ooh. And as we know, interest rates have dropped immensely. And I guess with inflation, maybe they'll go back up. But I also have some investments that I put in here on an annual basis. So you won't see those come in until December. So hopefully if our portfolios, our portfolio can make up the difference. Any questions on any revenues?
What kind of investments do you?
We are limited to the investments that we can be invested in. So they has to be AAA rated bonds. Basically, most of our portfolio is. So as interest rate goes up, they go down. As you know, they're inverse relationship. So this past year, we actually saw our investment portfolio go up in the last 3 months, but then I'm not sure what's going to happen as we shake out the rest of the year. Last year, I actually added about $80,000 to this in our portfolio. So sometimes it can be a nice increase in the interest that we see. And then again, if that happens, it flows right into our capital. So we'll take it and push it right over into capital. Although we're not using it in the current year, we're using it in the next year. Guess I'm kind of a conservative budgeter, so I don't want to spend it before I get it. I want to spend it after. All right, and then assigned and unassigned fund balance has not changed at all. So I'm not going to go through these. I did go through these in detail with you last time. I'll just ask if you have any questions, but basically this has not changed from last month. Usually I'd like to go through in detail because a lot of you haven't seen it before, but once I do that, if nothing has changed, I'm just gonna slide through it. Wheel tax. So we are in April, actual at 32,000, working on, we had a little bit of High Street left. I'm not sure why. And then Shawano Street, they'll be working on that obviously in the summer months. And those are the projects that I was talking about. And then our bond schedule. So here's where we're at with all of that. This is the newest bond. It was 2.4 million, and those are all the projects that are going on, and we track these by project. So as we go through them, you will see them sitting here in projects. You can see that we haven't been, the police roof hasn't been, we started it here, but those are always a lag. Sometimes can be 2-3 months before we see all of that stuff come to fruition, because there's some, you have to go up and make sure everything's looking okay, and you'll hold some money to make sure that things get taken care of, that you ask that they go back and take care of. So that's where we're at with that. Warner Allen has started, so that's that revenue, bond. And then we have the one over at the wastewater treatment plant, which hasn't moved at all again. And then that's it for my monthly reports. And then I can move on to my finance director's report. I have an annual financial statement that I have to complete every year by the 15th deadline. So I got that in last month. Shared revenue and highways are based on that formula. I read a little bit of today, unfortunately, that I heard highway dollars were down at the state level. So hoping that none of that gets cut going into next year. I'm working with Brent, our auditor, to complete our audit. Most of it's done, but seems like they always have another question. I said I would prefer that be presented to you guys next month. So I'm trying to answer them as fast as I can. So I'm hoping they will be here next month. Continuously watching the American Rescue money. We're at about 742,000 in my latest calculation. We will get together at Capitol and talk about how we will be spending those dollars. And we did talk to all the department heads about that money. And I told them to take a look at how that can be spent. But basically, there is not very many options, and it will be talked about and discussed in capital projects. Continue discussion on the TID districts. Those two have to be completed by the end of this month. So we'll be doing a lot of that work within our office and getting that over to Ellers. Participated in my CIVMEC board meeting. Had a number of review with the job descriptions, held our PHAs for the wellness, and then spent some time putting together the packets and a lot of other things that I don't write down. I can't write everything down and I get nothing done.
Questions? If not, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
You're adjourned.